Hello, everybody. My name is Augustin. I'm a singer, composer, and arranger. And in this video, I would like to explain a simple arranging technique for saxophone or trombone sections, in a big band, for example. Feel free to drop a comment, and just to have it said, subscribers to my channel are really welcome. So here we go. Very often, when a singer sings the melody or the soloist plays the solo, the saxes or the trombones play background layers, and you may wonder how these layers are constructed to sound smoothly. The technique we use to write these backgrounds is called spread voicing, and that's what I want to discuss right now. This technique can be applied on sections with 4 or 5 voices. I would like to discuss the version with 5 voices, as very often played by a saxophone section in a big band. But it can also be played by the trombones or a mixed section. In a standard big band, there are only 4 trombones, but you could either have the root played by the baritone sax or just leave the root off and have the bass notes played by the bass player, for example. So here we have a simple chord progression, which similarly might appear in a score. You just need to imagine a solo or a melody played or sung along your background line. It sounds like this. The principle is quite simple. As an arranger, you need to, so to say, compose the lead line of the background that way that you mainly use the 5th or the 9th, or their alterations, of the current chord in the lead voice. The background melody should not have the same note than the main melody performed by a singer or a soloist. But of course it can be fine to have led the main melody and the background melody together occasionally. The first and second voice in the big band saxes section normally will be the alto saxes, over here, 1, 2. The second voice of the section will play the 5th or the 9th, which was not used by the first voice, as we can see here. The tenor saxes, which play the 3rd and the 4th voice, over here, will play the so-called guide tones, which are the 3rd and the 7th of the chord, which determine the character of the chord. The baritone sax plays the root of the chord. Here we have the baritone. In our example, the first 2 chords, which are C major 7 and A minor 7, strictly follow this principal rule. As you can see, the 5th and the 9th and the 5th in the alto saxes and the guide tones in the tenor saxes. The baritones playing the root. In the 3rd chord here, the D7, the 5th is replaced by the 6th, which harmonically does have the same function as the 5th in a dominant 7th chord. This was written that way to achieve a more interesting line for the background to our imaginary main melody. Now we go to the chord in bar number 4, which is a G7 alterated. As you can see, the guide tones still remain the same, and in the alto saxes we have the 9th, which is alterated to a sharp 9, and we have the 5th, which in this case is alterated to a flat 13. And the baritone saxophone still plays the root. By the way, if you see the extension alt over here, it means that both 9th and 5th of a chord must be alterated either a half tone down or a half tone up, while the guide tones, of course, must remain the same, because changing them would result in a complete different chord. If either the 5th or the 9th of the chord are alterated, the extensions would be sharp 11, flat 13, which we have here, for example, flat 9, or sharp 9, which we have over here, as you can see. And to be super correct, in a case like this, the sharp 9 should be written as an A sharp instead of a B flat, but musicians rather like to read it that way. Don't ask me why. Using the 6th instead of the 5th is not an alteration, it's just a functional replacement. Which alteration, so-called tensions, you use in a chord depends on the melody and of course which sound you'd like to achieve on that special occasion. The next chord is an E minor 7. Here we have the 11 in the melody, which is very often used as a top note in a minor 7 chord. Here the 11 replaces the 5th. Below we have the 9, it's a F sharp. And in the tenor saxes we again find the guide tones of this chord, which is in this case the G and the D. The fact that the top note has moved downwards while the other voices have gone up is to provide a smooth flow and also to avoid getting in danger of being below the low interval limits. You always should be aware of them. Our next chord is a simple E flat 7. The same principle again, 9th and 5th, guide tones, and here again at the D minor 7 is the same thing. At our last two chords, our basic principle doesn't work anymore, because the melody goes too low. That, if set like the chords before, we would get below the low interval limits. So we have to change the whole thing to a close voicing as known from a normal 4-way close. This chord in bar 8 is a D flat 7 flat 13, which functions as a dominant to the last chord, the tonica of our little example. Here we are in C again. Changing between open spread voicing and a 4-way close voicing is very common and also can be used to achieve desired special sounds, for example, to underline a climax of a certain phrase. This D flat 7 flat 13 could also be interpreted as a G7 flat 13 if we change the D flat in the root to a deep G. Both chords have the same dominant function and work as a tritonal substitute for each other, a situation which is used very often in jazz harmonizations to just achieve a more interesting bass line. So, as you can see, writing for a background section is not a big deal, no mystery at all. I hope I could deliver some useful hints for you, and I wish you great success with your arranging work. Have fun and goodbye.